I'd like to preview the content for week one. This week is really about establishing the framework that we're going to use for the study of public speaking. And we move in three parts. We take a rhetorical approach to the medium of speech with a special focus on linguistics. So we begin with rhetoric. We define that term and we talk a little bit about how rhetoric provides a system for studying speech. Then we move into the medium of sound. So when we speak, we're operating in a sound-based medium, not a text-based one. And that's important in terms of how we prepare our speeches. And then finally, we look at language, how language works, how we create sentences, and how audiences hear and process language. So my hope is, by the end of this week, you'll have a better understanding for public speaking, what it is, how it works, and how you can get better at it. A class on public speaking is, in essence, a class on rhetoric. So what is rhetoric? This video is going to try to answer that question. So when people use the word rhetoric, they often mean that the speaker's lying. And I don't mean that when I say rhetoric. I'll admit the word's gotten a lot of bad press over the past, let's say, 2,500 years or so. But the study of rhetoric is really the study of effective communication. We're not the first people to study what goes into a good speech. The ancient Greeks and Romans spent a lot of time thinking about what sounds good, what looks good, and what works well for an audience. Aristotle defined rhetoric as the faculty of discovering in any particular case the available means of persuasion. It's a very analytic definition. Plato held that rhetoric is the art of winning the soul by discourse, very motivational definition. John Locke said that rhetoric is a powerful instrument of error and deceit. Okay, sometimes true. John Loch-Ness Monster hitting us with a truth bomb, I feel you. Nevertheless, we continue to define it. The contemporary writer Gerard Hauser defines rhetoric as communication that attempts to coordinate social action. Its goal is to influence human choices on specific matters that require immediate attention. That's a pretty pragmatic definition. Rhetoric for us is about figuring out what needs to be communicated and then doing that well. It's about analyzing the situation you find yourself in and then using rhetorical tools to craft a strategic and effective response. Rhetoric is one of the ways we're going to study the art of public speaking. It's a useful tradition, and that's why it's been with us for over 2,500 years. Right now, in every country around the globe, someone's probably preparing a presentation to give at work. They're probably up late, they're tired, they're worried. This could be a high-profile presentation to a new client. It could be a simple project update. So let's say, hypothetically, you have to give a short update about a project you're in charge of. Unfortunately, the project is over deadline and over budget. You still think it's a good project, so you want to make a strong case. So in preparing the update, you're working within the broad genre of Western-style presentational speech. Right? Keep it under 15 minutes. Make sure to address the key concerns. Don't speak too formally or too informally. Okay, so that's sort of the general concerns. And in addition to these, your department has a couple of unique expectations. So let's say most of the people in your department stand at the podium instead of walking around. And everyone seems to include just a ton of text on their slides, especially Dan. Dan with his slides. What are you doing to us, Dan? Give us a break. There's no Dan. It's a hypothetical situation. Nevertheless, despite all of these complicating factors, come 9:30, you got to stand and deliver. All of these factors comprise what we call the rhetorical situation. This video will examine how good speakers analyze and respond to rhetorical situations. So every time you stand up to speak, you're trying to come up with the best or the most appropriate response to the specific rhetorical situation you find yourself in. So at a minimum, rhetorical situations include factors like topic. So what are you speaking on and how does that limit what you can do for this audience? Are there some things that you want to include? Are there some things that you'd kind of rather not talk about? Setting. Where is the speech happening? When is it happening? And how does that impact you? This presentation is going to look very different if you deliver it in Paris or Moscow or Omaha, Nebraska. Audience. What does the audience already know? What questions or reservations do you think they have? Should you respond to those? Occasion. What expectations exist simply because of the speech's genre? What does your audience expect to hear in a standard project update? And then you have to decide where to conform to or deviate from these expectations. And speaker credibility. What do they know about you, if anything at all? And how can you perform your expertise within the speech itself? So all of these factors shift and change too. Some you can ignore, some you can't. So why go into all of this? To illustrate a simple but very often overlooked point. there is no single form of public speaking. There's no one thing that's always going to work. As a speech teacher, I cannot simply teach the one form of speech that works for all genres, for all speakers across all time. It doesn't exist. There's no Esperanto of public speaking. On the other hand, we can't just look at all the successful and unsuccessful speeches in all genres for all speakers across all time. That would take a bajillion years. That's bananas. So where does this leave us? I would say it leaves us with skills, experience, and judgment. Speaking is an intellectual and physical skill like playing sports. So, for instance, when we talk about good soccer players, we think about their ability to attack and to defend, to strategize, work with others, so on and so forth. We don't simply look at a great soccer player and we say, oh, it's their ability to trap the ball. That's what makes them great. No one's having the conversation, who was better, Pele or Maradona? Well, let's talk trapping. Hallmark of greatness, as you know. No one's having that conversation because those players are not great because of a single skill. They're good because of a whole bunch of skills. Skills that they develop through experience and study and practice. And most importantly, they have a strong sense of judgment about what to do and when to do it. In the same way, great speaking isn't simply about good delivery. It's about having the ability to judge rhetorical situations accurately, devise smart responses, and perform them well. Delivery is important for speaking. Trapping is important for playing soccer. But it's not just that one thing. So the goal of rhetorical study and the goal of this class isn't simply to write a good speech. That's important, but the goal is to become a good speaker. And this is why speaking is so challenging, right? It's a long-term pursuit. And not to get too tautological, but good speakers speak well because they're good speakers. Now, I would stress, I don't think they were born that way. They became good speakers by developing their skills, expanding their experience, and refining their judgment. Except maybe Dan with his slides.